My mom grew up in Melbourne, Florida in the 40s. A very Huck Finn existence, as she put it. This is the house she grew up in with her older brother Steve, mother, uncle, and grandmother, Mamaw. In later decades, the house would be converted into the Strawberry Mansion, a restaurant. Now it's a restaurant called the Big Mansion. Her mother, Helen, worked as a secretary at Patrick Air Force Base. Her uncle Edo worked there as well, as a mechanic. It was here my grandmother met my grandfather, Lovell Lawrence. He was an engineer in the space program, founded the American Rocket Society, started Reaction Motors, and built the Bell X-1 rocket aircraft, which broke the sound barrier in 1947 under the piloting skills of Chuck Yeager. While working for the space program, he developed the moon car and the Redstone rocket. He also worked with famed scientist Robert Goddard. My grandmother married my grandfather, and they all moved up to Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. It was here in this house that my mom's world changed. In rural Florida in the 50s, blacks were segregated from whites, and she had only ever heard about people called Jews. In Michigan, she was exposed to all new cultures. It opened her eyes. She developed a curiosity that only grew while she attended Michigan State University. After graduating, she married my father, Tom. They lived in a small apartment in Okemos, Michigan. It didn't last though, and they divorced in 1970 when I was 2 years old. Eventually, the wanderlust took hold of my mom, and she literally threw a dart on a map and wound up moving just the two of us out to the San Francisco area. I have fond memories of our apartment and my friends in Foster City, California. I bounced back to live with my dad and stepmom for a few years in Michigan. I had 2 half-brothers come into existence during that time. But then my mom moved me down to Naples, Florida in 1978. My grandfather had died in 1971, and my grandmother had retired there. She was a raging alcoholic and needed help. My mom was there for her. It was here that she finally settled down and found a home, back with her mom again. And it was one night when she was reading the newspaper that she told me of some event for kids. I said the magic words that ignited something in her. There should be a newspaper for kids. At the time, my mom worked for a local real estate publisher and had newspaper experience. She set to work on designing a newspaper for, about, and by kids. Kids News was born. I was the editor and got my friends to write articles about local events of interest to kids. Soon more kids from other schools who read the paper got on board.
I was around 12 years old, and I remember the nightly news was on, and there was actually a little feature about Kids News. And they interviewed Judy, and they interviewed her son, TL, and they said that they were looking for girls to join their newspaper staff. So I thought that would be a great idea. So I'm sure I called them, and so the next meeting they had, I met with them. One thing about Kids News is that I think everyone in middle school is looking for their place or their identity, and I think I needed a place and an identity, and that's why I really liked Kids News.
My story with Kid News started back in 1982. I was a student at a local middle school in Naples, Florida, and a teacher, English teacher, brought in a copy of Kid News, and she encouraged me to participate.
Kids News is just a local newspaper that I just showed interest in and ran into Judy, who was behind it, and TL, and just started going to their meetings and started writing for them. I took over the business end of it with advertising. I was the business manager, the reporter. I was a movie critic, food critic. I was just about all over. I was the oldest of the crew, so I had a little more experience than some of the others, but we had a great crew.
When I was a freshman in high school, my grandmother wrote to an NBC game show called Fantasy, starring Peter Marshall and Leslie Uggams. She told them of our little endeavor, and they flew us out to be on the show.
How often does it come out?
Once a month.
I see. Judy, how much does the paper cost?
About $170 monthly.
Gee, $177 monthly. Who pays for that?
Well, we all of the reporters bring in advertisement, but if we can't make it, my mom pays for it.
Now, who's working 2 jobs to do this? Is that you, Judy?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness gracious. What are the 2 jobs?
Well, I work at an advertising agency, which I use to help the kids out with my knowledge there to help them out with publishing. And I work as accountant for a lawyer.
I see. Well, just like TV shows, newspapers raise money by selling ads, do you think you'd consider selling, say, fantasy, an ad?
Oh, definitely.
All right.
Years.
Years?
Yeah.
Well, let me see. Now, we don't need anything big. I have a figure in mind. How about 209 if you divide by 3? How about $177 a month for the next year, which adds up to $2,124? Helen, don't sit down. Stand up, Helen. Helen, she's fainting on it.
The spirit of Kids News was Judy Lawrence.
Judy was just awesome. She was different than any other adult I knew. And so I formed a very close relationship with her, trusted her. She was the type of person that I could ask any question to, and she would answer it honestly. Unlike my parents, who probably tried to, I don't know, maybe portray things differently, so I wouldn't necessarily know the truth to it. Judy always just came out and she told me the truth about everything.
What a wonderful person. She was always there to help whenever we'd have writing block or have, even being kids, we needed transportation somewhere. She was the local bus like most parents. But she was there. She wrote me letters of recommendation when I was looking into colleges and employment.
She was so very encouraging. I think that for me in particular, I needed encouragement. I needed someone who was going to tell me that, hey, you want to be a writer? That's awesome. You absolutely need to do that. And so at that season of my life, that wasn't the case a lot. So to interact with an adult who was encouraging and someone who wanted to see you succeed, that was the beginning of better days for me.
We actually had the mayor proclaim Kids News Day down at City Hall, and it was the Kids News Day in Naples. They gave us proclamation, and we were able to meet all our elected officials at the time.
The final installment of Star Wars was going to come out, and we got press tickets, so to speak, so that we could go to that movie showing. And that was really fun to be able to say, hey, I'm going to this movie as a member of the press to give our reviews.
So I had the opportunity through Kids News to meet and interview like Jerry Reed. TL interviewed Weird Al Yankovic, and I tagged along and I got to meet him, and Olympic gold medalist Bart Connor. So there was a lot of people who came to town, and Kids News allowed me the opportunity to meet famous people and to interview them. And I think that also gave me confidence to be able to just approach anybody in sales, or to interview people, or to even interview, when I get job interviews. So long life lessons with Kids News, that's for sure.
Kids News was home back then.
Eventually, Kids News folded as the core kids grew into more adult activities. We all moved on, but its influence lasts to this day.
With that experience and her encouragements, I think I'm better off where I'm at today. I've been working school district for 20 plus years, and then I'm also in political, and I'm in union activism. And Judy always encouraged me to go for what I wanted to go for. Set my goals high.
I grew up in a home that was kind of bigoted. Judy was very liberal. She did not have like a racist or a bigoted bone in her body. So I learned from Judy to be very accepting of all people. And it really changed my outlook on other people that I work with or even just are friends with. And I know that might sound like a small thing, but it's really not. When you have an adult who changes the way you're thinking for the better and it lasts your whole life, that's awesome.
Judy didn't seem like, she was an adult, but she interacted with me more like a person. You know, obviously I was 12, 13, a teenager, but she didn't talk down to me. She didn't treat me like a kid. She treated me like a peer, treated me like someone who needed to be encouraged.
I didn't have like the full story on the birds and the bees. So I asked her, and she told me like everything I needed to know, and she would tell me in detail, and she never even flinched. Yeah, it's a good thing that Judy kind of set me right, because even though I wasn't like sexually active back then, you're curious when you're in middle school. And so, yes, she definitely answered everything I wanted to know at any time.
My mom eventually retired and moved in with me in 2008. She lived the next 7 years with myself and 2 sons, Alex and Zach. She passed away in early 2015, but lives on in our memories and the kids of Kids News.
But I bumped into her one time when I was in Naples visiting friends and family. And it was so fun to catch up with her. I got to tell her then how much she meant to me. How she said, she goes, I could tell, she goes, that there just wasn't something, that you just needed a little bit more encouragement than the other kids did. And if I had known that what you needed was so much more, I could have maybe done something. And I told her that I appreciated that, but there are some battles we all have to face, and that was my battle at the time. But she was an important part of a tapestry that was being put into place so that when I did have to fight that battle, I could do it. And so I'm glad that Judy Lawrence believed in me and understood that sometimes it takes a little while, but better days are ahead.
So Judy was my mentor and very important to me. And I feel bad that in the last few years, I don't want to cry. I do. I feel guilty that I didn't keep close enough contact with her when she moved to Orlando. But it's just because life gets in the way. And whenever I'd go up to Orlando, I'd try to go see her. Oh, now I'm crying. I still miss her. I think about her all the time. But I always kept in contact with her. I definitely loved her. She was like a mom to me. Judy believed in reincarnation, and she felt like we were like mother and daughter in a past life, and hopefully she was right. So hopefully I'll see her again someday. But